I were to choose any one person that has been a BFP in my life, it would be Ravi Zacharias. Ravi Zacharias has had an extreme impact on my faith, which usually came from his speaking and his apologetics. He was able to he was a complete master in apologetics and was able to reach people through his speaking in a way that others have not have been able to. By his speaking and apologetics work, he was able to impact me very much, creating arguments for free will and arguments against the secular world that were hard not to adopt for myself. These arguments helped form my theological and apologetic foundation, and his use of words and conveying his mind were very well received. I understand, though, why it might not be a good idea to look up to Ravi Zacharias for legitimate reasons. He has very well almost destroyed his own legacy through his actions, and certainly has left me wondering whether or not he truly believed. There have been major accusations against him that are hard to ignore, which have ultimately left his organization in shambles. I remember that it was during the major Texas freeze that I first read the report made by the private investigators that he and his organization had hired. It was fairly heinous, and I was left in disgust that a man that I had looked up to for so long had committed such acts. He spoke with such a faith that I basically had to believe everything that he had said, and I took this for granted. Now I understand that God can use anyone to make his truth known, and there are many examples in Scripture, such as David, that help us understand this. It certainly hurts to have once claimed Ravi Zacharias the spiritual father. Having a spiritual father is something important to me, and it is a void that I feel needs to be filled. Ultimately, your spiritual father needs to be Jesus, and I think this is a flawed concept of having a spiritual father. Despite this, having a good liaison between us and him is good as well. I considered Ravi Zacharias my spiritual father due to many reasons. He had a really good way with words, and spoke with elegance. He spoke with the intent to defend the scriptures and never lost an argument that I know of. Despite this, I understand some prominent figures have had an idol as well, such as John MacArthur, who took up the Apostle Paul as his idol. I say idol, but I mean spiritual father. I certainly have had Paul's letters to look up to as well. Despite this, Ravi had a very good teaching to use. I remember when I was at Berlin, a secular school, I used his teachings of free will as an argument in class. Ravi taught that to be able to make an objective truth claim meant you had to have free will, so as a proponent of free will, I used his argument. He also spoke very fervently against the secular world, and this hit me to the core because I cared about the institution of Christianity in the everyday world. Ravi also spoke to others in a very charismatic way, which is something that I look up to. Even with all of this, I still struggle with Ravi because of his actions. But I know that God can use absolutely anybody to make his will known, and Ravi is no exception. As I previously mentioned, David was a very flawed being through whom God made himself known, and Ravi can be categorized as the same. Ravi himself even says that God chooses the weak to make himself known to the Jews compared to the Romans or the Greeks. Whether or not I choose to keep Ravi as a spiritual father is entirely up to me in prayer, so I should keep that in mind. As of now, it really hurts to listen to Ravi, even over YouTube, knowing that his life is destroyed by his own actions.